Welcome, members and guests. Today is Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. I hereby call the Subcommittee on Elections and Campaign Finance to order. Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Representative Holtzclaw. Representative Love. Representative Manis. Here. Representative Shaw. Here. Representative Williams. Here. Representative Wright. Here. Chairman Crawford. Present. Chairman Rudd.
Here.
Chairman Rudd, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We are, before we begin, are there any personal orders or anything members need to say? Seeing nothing, we will proceed on to today. We have 15 bills on the calendar. We will go ahead and proceed to a few changes. Item number 1, HB 1221 by Lynn, has been taken off notice. And item number 6, HB 2622 by Powers, has been taken off notice. Let's see, next up, item number 13 by Shaw, HB 2101, has been taken off notice and goes to special calendar, I believe. And also item number 12, HB 1324 by Representative Hardaway, is the fourth row, and it goes to a special calendar. Is that correct? And for those of you who wonder what special calendar is, we're allowed to roll a bill 3 times. Once it goes to 3 times, unless it's voted out of committee, it automatically goes to special calendar to be heard at the end of session or to be reconsidered. All right, we'll proceed on. Item number 2, HB 2074 by Representative Griffey. Motion, second. We have a motion and second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I would like a roll call vote, please, on this bill, if I may. I'm not running an amendment on this. I'm running with the original bill. What House Bill 2074 does was essentially 3 things. One, it would say that beginning with the 2024 election cycle, that each county election commission shall move to ballot marking devices or hand-marked ballots and tabulate the votes using electronic tabulator or by hand count. And if the county commissions cannot acquire it by that election cycle, they can request an extension from the Secretary of State's. It would also implicate that the state should share at least 50% of the costs that the county election commissions might incur to purchase any new equipment subject to appropriations. It would also require that poll watchers, I believe, are currently at a 10-foot length, the closest they can get. It would reduce that to a 3-foot distance as the maximum distance. They're not to get closer than that. It's for counting ballots and processing the ballots. And the reason for that, I think we saw some video from the 2020 elections where poll watchers were behind, plastic screens way off away and would not allow them to do their jobs. The last thing it would do would indicate for the coordinator of elections to prescribe security features to be used on paper ballots and instruct them to try to use the best features possible, and he can change it as necessary to maintain the integrity and security of the election process. So,
by the way, we do have a first and second on that with no amendments. Have questions on the bill?
And Mr. Chairman, there may be some people here to speak on it. Just to...
Okay. I've got to leave to present a bill across the hall, and I'll be right back. I'm going to hand the seat and gavel over to Chairman Crawford. He has I believe we got 2 presenters that want to give testimony.
Out of session. Kathy Harms.
Without objection, we'll go out of session to hear from our speakers. First on the list, Kathy Harms. You're allowed 3 minutes, ma'am.
I have to push it? Okay. My name is Kathy Harms. I'm from Franklin, Tennessee, and I am here in support of HB 2074. I realize that HB 2331 did pass through and that it has some similarities with the paper ballot. However, it did not address the one important component in the HB 2074 does have on the ballot, and that is the presence of security identifiers such as an identifier or a watermark. And why is that important? The state of Tennessee has not had a widespread use of paper ballots in the past. As you know, roughly 67% of the 67 counties do not currently use paper ballots. And so we did not incur a lot of the problems that the states did that use a lot of paper ballots in 2020. However, the trajectory is changing with bills like HB 2331 and HB 2074, and we are looking to use more paper ballots, which is a great thing. However, there were the problems that happened in the states that did use them, and we are saying there are ways that we can learn from some of those mistakes and some of the things that happen. Many people think that the only problem with ballots that happened in these other states were the mail-in ballots. Well, that is incorrect. There have been studies done and there has been research done on what happened in some of these states. In Georgia, for instance, they were able to get the batches publicized to some groups that requested them through a FOIA request to get those documents, and they found a lot of problems with in-person as well as mail-in ballots. There were hundreds of thousands of ballot problems, and some of those included the in-person ballots, such as duplicate tabulating, the timestamps were off. These are a lot of ballots that we're talking about. So there were problems with in-person ballots. So what we're saying here is that the problems occurred mostly because they did not have secure identifiers. And so these things could get through the tabulation process without being noted as either double scanned or a counterfeit ballot or a ballot that was duplicated. They did not know if, like you saw, like I did, all of the suitcases that were pulled out under the tables at 2 o'clock in the morning. The questions arose, were ballots deleted and new batches put in? Were they duplicated through the process? Without a secure identifier, there's no way to know that. You saw that there were problems in Arizona also. As a result of the problems in 2020, a couple of states have already taken action. In Arizona, through the Senate, they've already passed legislation for unique identifiers and security measures on their ballots. In addition, Georgia passed SB 202 this year that makes those ballot images a public record, so people can look at them and actually go in and see the ballots in their counties and in their state. In addition, just last week, we had election officials in Texas and in Michigan that were either arrested or forced to resign because of ballot tampering. So why does this require legislation? Well, in 2020, the General Assembly passed an amendment to Tennessee Code 2-4-114 that exempted machines that use ballot marking devices or ballot on demand from having any kind of numbering or other
Ms.
security
Harms,
markers.
You're past your 3 minutes. Can you please wrap up?
Yes. What are we asking for here today? We need to fix that amendment, and we also would like to learn from the issues that occurred in the other states, and know that our ballots that are cast is only one illegal ballot per person. They cannot be duplicated, omitted, or scanned more than once. In support of HB 2074. Thank you.
Does any of the members have any question for Ms. Harms before? Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you for testimony today. So most of the examples that you shared with the committee today, which one of those happened in the state of Tennessee?
None of those. I've never said anything happened in the state of Tennessee.
I just wanted to clarify that.
None.
Yeah.
Chairman Williams?
Thank you. The other thing that you stated is these unique identifier, qualifier. Are you aware that the bill in front of us without amendments does not deal with that issue at all?
HB 2074, in the second part, to my understanding, does require some type of security identifiers. The word unique might not be used in the bill, but it's called a security identifier, such as a watermark or other things. It's there's 2 parts. It's the last section.
Okay.
Follow up?
No.
Chairman Williams?
Thank you. I just want to know.
Any other questions? Okay. This is for the speakers, correct? Yes. No, I'll wait. Okay. For the speakers. Representative Holtzclaw? Okay. All right. Representative Shaw, did you have a question for our speaker? No, sir. Representative Love, for the speaker. Go ahead. You're recognized.
Thank you for your presentation. And I did have a question about the section where it says that the coordinator of elections can change the ballot security features from election to election. Does that present a problem in your estimation?
Well, the good thing about that would be that if the criminal, so to speak, element figures out what your identifiers are, you have the opportunity to change them. It would be like for counterfeiting any kind of currency. They might change that up at different times. I don't have a problem with that.
Representative Love?
Thank you. And just one last question. So, in your estimation, this is needed because of what happened in other states?
I believe that question's already been asked, but we'll go ahead with it. Ms. Harms, you can answer that question.
Yes, it's learning from the mistakes of other states that did not have these in place, and they had much wider use of the paper ballot than we currently do. And we are headed down the road, which I think is a great road, to having more paper ballots.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions for the speaker? Chairman Williams.
Thank you. I had an opportunity to look here. I guess the question is, what kind of machine can tabulate a result yet not be tampered with that can screen for a unique identifying number?
Ms. Harms?
Well, there's two ways you can do this. One is a very inexpensive scanner that can kick out a counterfeit bill, just like they do in the banks. The other way is the current tabulators that I know that we have that are used have an ability to take a ballot image as it goes through. That's what happened in Georgia. It was actually the Dominion tabulator. So there are tabulators that do take a picture of the image. So that what it gives you is a check and balance. So let's say the tabulator sees it and takes the picture and it gets scanned more than once. You have that digital image that shows you it was scanned more than once. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess one of the concerns that many people have, as well as I do, is that if you have just a tabulating machine, then that's great. But anytime you add more bells and whistles to it, it's not a tabulating machine anymore. So if you take a tabulator and then you add a unique identifier on a paper ballot, of which most of the fraud that you discussed in the state that's not inside the borders of Tennessee, most of those were paper ballots. So and we didn't have any problems. So I guess my concern is if the problem is machines, which I hear can be tampered with, then the more complex the machine, the more opportunity you have to tamper with it. Does that not concern you at all by opening Tennessee to more paper ballots and more machines?
I'm not asking for another machine. What this bill is just saying that the tabulator, because it does have the capacity to take an image, a digital image, that identifier would have a digital image attached to it, which gives you just the check and balance against the paper that comes out of the tabulator. If there was a concern, you have two artifacts now. You have a digital image with those identifiers that tie it back to the actual ballots in the event that there were a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Chairman Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ma'am, the scope of the bill that's before us today is just Election Day, election site. And you're suggesting to us that we should have, and let me back up and say, I'm from Knox County, where the new method of working at the poll, voting at the poll, is to take a piece of paper and mark it, and then that's tabulated. Are you suggesting that at the polling place we need paper that is watermarked and discreetly identifiable?
Yes.
Ms. Harms?
Yes.
And the reason I ask that question is because there's going to be considerable expense to that when that piece of paper is placed in a locked, guarded box and can readily be used for tabulating again at later dates, just as the watermark paper could be.
Well, there are ballots that are out there that have been costed, and they're about 25 cents per million. Currently, some of the ballot marking devices are upwards of above 30 cents per ballot. So there's going to be a charge for the ballot one way or the other. And in the old system where people just went out and had the ballot printed in the state of Tennessee, those ballots had a serial number that stayed, that when the ballot came back, it was in a binder, so to speak, and it came off, and so there was something there in the binder itself too, but it just doesn't follow the ballot in through the process.
Chairman Wick.
So let me be a little bit more to the point. Were you mentioning then ballots that were mailed out and received back? Because we're just speaking here on the bill, only those pieces of paper used in a polling place where you've been identified by your ID card, where you've been checked into the book, and then you receive a piece of paper which is then marked by the individual, and only that one piece of paper can be retained by the polling place, placed in a locked box, and used for future reference.
Mrs. Harms.
Yes, this has nothing to do with mail-in or absentee ballots.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Mr. Chairman.
questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, thank you for being with us and having your testimony today. At this time, I would ask Dennis Holtz to come up.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being with us today, Mr. Holtz. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for this opportunity. Is this, okay. So, first of all, about the cost. It's a lot cheaper to use.
Please identify yourself.
I'm sorry. Dennis Holtz, Dixon County. It's cheaper to use an optical scanner than to go with these big complicated machines. I mean, in the long run, you're going to amortize the costs out, and obviously that would be an easy way to go. The main concern, we've been talking with 15 different groups in the state of Tennessee that are all seriously concerned about election integrity. In fact, they consider it their #1 issue. They are looking for a secure ballot, and that is top on their list. I believe that within the next few months, you'll probably see litigation in West Tennessee. I think there already is litigation in Middle Tennessee and litigation in East Tennessee on the 2020 elections. And at least what I've heard, this is in the process right now. So what that means is the public, whatever is being done, does not right now trust the election process. This is a very simple bill that speaks volumes about moving ahead with a secure means of protecting each individual vote. Here is a map from verified voting.
I'm sorry, sir, you can't use that. We don't allow props.
Okay, no props. So 70% of the United States population votes with paper ballots. Tennessee, it's been down under 20, probably under 17%. Tennessee is now moving into this realm. The 70% of the United States that does use paper ballots, obviously those paper ballots have not worked. We've seen what's happened in many of the swing states, and the point is that they are now learning the lessons and moving forward. So our belief is if Tennessee is taking this step to go to paper ballots, which it is, and going from machines that did not have any means of recording or verifying what was happening other than what was inside the machine, then it needs to learn. Tennessee should learn and stay in the front of what happens with election integrity nationwide. And the way that happens is for this bill to be approved. It's a simple overlay over all the other things that are being considered about paper ballots. This overlay simply is an additional, or actually the only layer of true security that exists to make sure that each ballot is individually counted once, and connected with a particular voter. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. Is there any questions for the sponsor? Thank you. We will now ask, I've had a request to have Mark Goins come up, and without objection, we'll hear from Coordinator of Elections. Please identify yourself for the record.
Mark Owens, Coordinator of Elections for the state of Tennessee. I don't know what questions you're going to have, but one thing for the record, I do want to make clear. In 2020, the only lawsuit that I'm aware of was a city race. I think it was decided by one vote, and the court upheld that election. So I think the previous speaker said there's some lawsuits filed. We're not other states. I mean, we did not have anyone on the federal state level challenge the election results in the November 2020 election. So I just want to make sure that the record is clear. And I would know this because if there was a lawsuit, I'm the one that gets sued.
Chairman Holtzclaw, you're recognized for questions.
Thank you, Chairman. And basically, I've got a three-part question for you. If this bill passes, do you feel it will make Tennessee elections more secure?
I think it makes elections more complicated. And so there's different ways to look at it. If you put a unique identifier on the ballot, what you're going to have is some voters, and maybe even a majority of the voters, say, I see a unique identifier on there. You know how I voted. And that is the negative to it. I think the legislature, you know, some folks say after 2020 they woke up and started thinking about election integrity. You know, Secretary Hargett and this committee and myself, this is my 13th year into it. And y'all have built a structure that has us currently ranked number 3 in the entire nation as far as election security. 85% of the people in a poll that was done recently said they had confidence in the election. That doesn't mean that everyone has confidence in the election, but what it does say, when you compare us to other states, they like the way that the process is that you all have built. So at the end of the day, there's certain mechanisms that you can take to make it secure. I mean, we could require a thumbprint when people come to vote, but at the end of the day, do voters want that? You know, I mean, you got to look at the election setting and consider it all. And if you have a unique identifier on there, my concern would be that folks would say that we know how they're voting.
Okay.
Chairman?
And then, if we implemented this, if the bill passed, how much would it slow the process down?
Mr. Goins?
Well, I think, you know, you certainly would have some questions about the unique identifier. I think some people would talk about that. As far as slow the process down, I mean, we're focused on Section 3, but realize there's other sections as well. I mean, Section 1, that would require new voting machine technology for at least 45 counties, you know, microvote equipment. And that's a policy decision. If y'all don't think microvotes should be going forward, then I'll accept that and we'll work with that. But you'll have some new training with that, not just with the voters, voter education, but also with the folks that work the precincts. So you'll have some, you'll have some potential issues there. If this also has the 3 feet or less for poll watchers, and I know one of the speakers had gone to view what happened in Williamson County. If we can accommodate that, we will. But I know the chairman has received communication from his administrator. You have 40 poll watchers there to watch that process. There's no way to comply with the law that says 3 feet, because you're going to, by definition, exclude someone. So this law goes, this bill goes a little bit further. But at the end of the day, if this is the direction that the committee wants to go, we'll make it work as best we can. But that would also hamper somewhat of the process, not necessarily the voting, but at the actual counting of the voting and those things, having folks that close, and particularly the numbers.
Chairman Holtzclaw?
And then the last little bit of it, puts 50% of the cost to the locals. And is that part of the cost local? Could that be federal money funding this?
Mark Goins?
Yeah, on this would increase. So the Representative Bricken's bill that he has, it's less because the thought process is they potentially will continue to use some of the equipment that's currently employed. And when they do the RFPs, if you look at the numbers, typically some equipment's a little cheaper. When you look at this, the cost does go up some more. So there would be more money that would have to be utilized to fund this bill. Now, in all candor, as y'all know, we have been working with other folks trying to get a supplemental budget appropriation, and things starting to look good there. If we were able to get that, if this bill starts moving, we would ask for an increase. It doesn't mean we'll get it, but as far as the finance mechanism, if this committee, I'm going to be fair about this. I mean, if we're going to work on Representative Bricken's bill, we're going to do the same with Representative Griffey's bill as best we can. But as it's written, with the money that we've been speaking to the governor's office about currently, it would have more of an unfunded mandate.
And I reckon the last question, that'd be machine availability.
Yeah, that's one of the things you can't predict. So far as we've testified before, we don't have, as far as machines, we've had some chain issues, but machines hasn't been one of them yet. It could be. You never know. But thus far, we've not had that issue. Have had it with the ballot component of it. You certainly could have issues. We have an issue right now with ballots. In fact, there's a congressional hearing, I think Thursday, that I'm going to be listening to that is talking about some of the paper issues shortages that are being faced, not just in Tennessee, but in other states as well. We're fortunate in that when it comes to absentee by mail balloting, we don't have a large number that's requesting that ballot, so we may be hit less than some of the other states.
Thank you, Chairman.
The chairman will take privilege here and just make the committee aware, according to the fiscal responsibility, it would increase state revenues by over $13 million and local expenditures for $13 million. And that was, I think, that was prepared with the amendment, and I don't know what it would be without. So, Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Goins, for being here today. You would testify that I spent last weekend with you.
Absolutely. We talked about the security of elections, and Tennessee was featured as the first state in this nation from a group of legislators as a strong state, strong elections. And that's what I mean. We get recognized because election integrity is something we think about all the time.
Yeah. Do you agree then that, and I think you said it, that basically other states have been looking to us because of what we've done, because we are one of the leading states, number 3, I believe, in the United States in terms of election integrity?
Both Secretary Hargett and myself have turned down requests to speak in other states about legislation moving through the process where they were trying to move through us. Georgia has adopted some of our practices, and other states are as well.
Last question I want to ask you, from your standpoint, and maybe you all would have or would not, did you all receive any information from any other state in the United States where they proved that there was election fraud?
Mr. Goins?
So you're
not
asking
Tennessee.
I mean,
but
from
no, I'm asking you, did you receive any information from any other state in the United States other than Tennessee that there was election fraud?
I haven't received it from another state. It's certainly something I've been following, in some other states where they're bringing charges. But it's what I've seen is fairly similar to what we have. We had less than 20, and some of the other states, that's where they are as well. But it's not necessarily notification from another state. It's more reading articles of actual charges that's been brought. Now, there's allegations out there, and if you read, if you hear the allegations, there's certainly more than actual charges being brought. But I've been following the charges that's been brought.
And most of the charges, not the allegations, were pretty much similar to what we had here and there, a couple of small issues that may have occurred, but nothing major other than allegations. Would that be fair?
As far as charges, I would agree with more allegations outside the state of Tennessee involving irregularities, but when you look at actual charges, it has been not that many.
And last on our list is Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Director Goins. A quick question, or a couple quick questions. The poll watcher component, did we have, I've heard of discussion in other states where they had issues where poll watchers weren't able to get in. I know in order to have additional poll watchers other than those that are folks that are there on behalf of the Election Commission, were there any people that were denied access as long as they followed the rules about registering early with the Election Commission?
Mr. Goins?
The only issue I know of in 2020 was a gentleman would not wear a mask. And if someone was inside the polling location, it was going to be there all day in order to protect the poll workers and all that, he objected. But he watched. He put his mask on and watched. That's the only objection that I know in 2020.
Chairman Williams.
Okay. As it relates, I know you mentioned some earlier about microvote and Representative Bricken's bill, Chairman Bricken's bill. That bill would not eliminate any of the current his bill would not eliminate any of the current voting machines that we have, but would allow for some of those to be modified so that all would have a verifiable paper trail. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. However, if this bill is to pass, districts like mine that do use microvote, their machines would be invalid, so they couldn't use them at all. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's where the $13.9 million variance in this fiscal note versus other fiscal notes. I did notice that in Representative Griffey's bill, it showed an effective date starting in the 2024 elections. I guess that's because you're giving time for people to ramp up to buy these machines over the period of time, but they wouldn't go in effect this fall.
Mr. Goins?
Yeah, that's correct, but I think that's a good provision. That's not something that, I think that's a good provision, 2024, and it does give a hardship for 2026.
Yeah, last week we had discussion about an amendment. He was going to go work on an amendment over the weekend, get back with the members, try to sort out, some challenges that we had with the bill. Did his office contact you anything on any mandatory language this past week?
His office has contacted us about various ideas, not necessarily an amendment over the last week, but I will say that Representative Griffey throughout has, the poll watcher situation, the machine situation. We've had discussions. So yeah, he's been proactive.
Okay, I just wondered because I came fully prepared today to find an amendment that we're talking about, not go back to the original bill, which started several weeks ago. The final question is, you mentioned earlier about the money. I guess my concern is that under this current bill, I'd eliminate the voting machines from my community, therefore having a 50% shared cost in my local community to do that. And then we would introduce, thirdly, paper ballots, of which we currently don't have, but all the evidence of fraud that we had, that we got to see on social media in the presidential election, were the utilization of paper ballots. Does that, in most cases, were the utilization of paper ballots, pulling them out from under tables, as we all saw in videos. I guess the question is, does it concern you at all that by opening paper ballots, it would give more pathways for fraud, or do you think being able to trace who's voting and what they're voting and who they voted for is worth the trade-off?
Mr. Goins?
So the trade-off with part of this, I would say it's not an equal trade-off, but you are correct in what the allegations of a lot of fraud out there did involve paper. The trade-off really that I'm narrowly focusing on more, or not narrowly, but more focusing on, is the ability to come back in and recreate that election in case you need to have that paper record. So I think when you're looking at the two different, you certainly have to have the proper chain of custody in place, and you do have to be very vigilant when you have a paper-based system. But the flip side of that is the confidence that you have in case something were to happen, or in case you need, when there's a very close election, you need to come back in and do a recount. You'll have the ability to do that in a better fashion. You'll have the actual record there that you can view. As far as the merits of Section 3, you're asking to weigh that. I don't think that the merits, obviously I'm a strong proponent of the watermark. And I think they took part of the language from me where I do think you should change it as much as you can from election to election to be more vigilant on making sure you don't have a pattern. But some of this stuff that's in there that I don't think the trade-off is there. I don't think it outweighs the perception.
Chairman Williams.
Finally, I just wanted to say that I had the opportunity, the great disdain of having a contested election in my state Senate district many years ago, utilizing some of the same means by which, and during that process, I was amazed at how much we were able to verify as it related to that contested election. It was between the previous state senator from my district, and the system. You don't really know if the system works until you had someone challenge an election. In this instance, we did have a challenge to the election, and the results came back identical. And so appreciate your hard work and all your department does and make sure our elections are safe and we're able to verify that the results that we had are in fact good. So thank you.
Thank you, Coordinator Goins. We appreciate your hard work and dedication to the state. So thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, without objection, we'll go back into session. Is there any questions for the sponsor?
May I address some of the comments?
Representative Griffey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to address some of the issues that were brought up. Under current law, with Representative Bricken's bill or this bill, the current microvote system is going to be outlawed. That will no longer be legal. And my position is, under my bill, microvote would still be allowed because what microvote has is a module that they attach to it, and it was up in the 8th floor with all the other voting machines that runs a paper tape along that when the voter selects the selection on the screen, it records those on the paper tape, and that's what's recorded and tabulated according to the microvote vendor. So I submit that mine would not outlaw microvote. It would the current system, which is simply a DRE, a digital recording electronic voting machine. And that's the problem we have in Tennessee, and that's the main problem I was trying to address with this legislation. Because right now, we can all sit here and say we've got a great election system, but if somebody had hacked one of the DREs in a prior election, we can't prove that now. There's no way to go back and prove that. And that's the problem we have in Tennessee. We need to get away from that so we have some kind of paper audit trail and go back and verify that the machine is actually counting them the way the people have marked on the paper or the ballot marking devices does when you select the thing. And if you will remember when Jeanette Cornice with the Hardin County Election Commission spoke, she said that they use the ballot marking devices and it's scanned with a separate scanner, but what they do is they take the actual hard copy ballots and they verify the counts on those are matching the counts on the machine. And to me, that's a very secure system. And I think that's probably the best system unless you're going to go to hand-marked paper ballots and hand count them by yourself. So that's what I'm trying to do with this bill. And as the consideration on the expense, it's my understanding the coordinator of elections already has a significant amount of money to try to assist locals in the purchase of new equipment when they decide to recycle it through. So it's my understanding there were sufficient funds for that. It was a U.S. Department of Elections, I believe Homeland Security grant funding. On the security features provision, Section 3, it simply says the coordinator of elections shall prescribe security features that must be used on paper ballots. The security features may include watermarks, fluorescents, digital holograms, or a unique identifier that ensures no ballot can be duplicated or counted more than once. The coordinator of elections may change the ballot security features from election to election. It is the intent of the General Assembly that the coordinator of elections shall the coordinator of elections use all reasonable features, security features, to ensure the security of the elections. That's all it does. I wanted to give the coordinator of elections as much flexibility as possible. So what this bill is simply trying to do is move us away from the DRE machines, similar to Rush Bricken's bill, but I think mine's got a little more additional security features in it. So now I would respectfully ask you to...
The chairman would take privilege here, and I just want to clarify one thing. You said in your statement there that they had money to take care of these, and not all counties will be made whole. If they bought their machines this year, they don't fall into that category. It's going to cost my county over $400,000. So not all of them.
You're right, and I didn't mean I'm trying in new machines that are going to be purchased going forward if this bill is enacted. And again, my bill says subject to appropriations. If the appropriations aren't there, the counties can't be forced to do it. So,
any other questions for the sponsor? Chairman Williams.
Thank you. I don't understand how that works. So you're saying that, first of all, I agree with the chairman. This is an unfunded mandate on locals, period. It is because, and even in the fiscal note, it says that it is. The coordinator of elections testified that he's trying to get the money, not just for a version of yours, but also a version of Brickens because it's already gone through this committee and other committees. But at the end of the day, there's no guarantee we're going to get this money. So by passing your bill, we're telling our local communities, and particularly my community, that I have to throw out everything and that they're going to have to fund it. For your bill, I don't understand the terminology and been here for many years as it relates to fiscal policy. So you're saying that your bill has drafted in it that if the money doesn't show up, it's null and void?
Well, it was my intent not to do unfunded mandates, and reviewing it and based upon your comments, maybe this language is not the language I had intended. What I wanted to do is the state would have to fund at least 50%, or you can't force the locals to do it. And it was my understanding that there has been grant money from the Department of Homeland Security or whatever to try to assist locals in the purchase of the new machines. And I believe Coordinator Goins indicated at the testimony on Rush Brickens' bill that they have some money to try to help locals and thought that they could meet the demands if Rush Brickens' bill is passed. And my argument or contention is this bill is not that much difference from what Rush Brickens' bill does. It's trying to move us to a paper ballot, paper audit trail, get away from the DRE machines.
Chairman Williams.
The other bill is less money by nature. I mean, to say that you brought all of us a sandwich today so we could eat lunch, but only I received one, doesn't mean we all left full. And so if the budget, if the budget doesn't apply, and it becomes null and void, I don't know how that can work. It's simply untenable. So either we have to pass a bill that can get funded or we can't. I understand this is not the place where we do the funding, but when we do have something that costs less, that's already been before this committee that meets many of the same criteria as the one you just described, and it costs less because under your bill, my community would have to buy all new machines. Under the previous bill that came through here, those machines can be modified. So the cost differential, especially when it's an unfunded mandate, which is what your bill does, unfunded 50% of the total. If it's unfunded, then I don't know how it's even tenable for us to do that. And to your point, you admitted that it's unfunded. So I don't know what the solution is. Can you help me understand that better?
Representative Griffey.
It's my understanding that there's money to help your county purchase new machines, and under my bill, it's my position that that same money would be used for purchasing new machines that would comply with this law. I don't think this law is material difference as far as the ballot marking devices, paper ballot trail requirement in Representative Brickens' bill.
Chairman Williams.
That you're operating under the assumption that they're the pot of money is bottomless. Under your premise, that's the only way you can do it. Is that the money? You could even say that is that you believe the funding mechanism is a bottomless pit, and that we can get all the money that we need. Representative Griffin.
Well, I think that's an unfair characterization. I think what I'm trying to say is based upon the testimony Coordinator Goins made during Representative Brickens' bill, that there is a pot of money that they felt could meet Representative Brickens' bill, and I submit to you my bill is not materially different from Rush Brickens' bill regarding the purchase of new machines.
Chairman Williams.
What he testified in the committee is that there were two pots full of money. One was federal money and one was money they had on hand. He said that it was going to be his ability to try to petition for more money to be able to pay for that bill based upon its original cost. That was not communicated about your bill, except for today. For the first time, he said he would try in the same fashion that he did. But the amount of money that he has to attain under the previous bill that meets a lot of the same criteria as yours does is less money. And it doesn't eliminate 35 to other election commissions. So I appreciate it, and I apologize to the members for going round and round on this issue. Thank you.
Representative Griffey. The question's been called on the bill. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're ready to vote on House Bill 2074. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Representative Holsclaw? No. Votes nay. Representative Love? Votes nay. Representative Manis? Votes nay. Representative Shaw? Votes nay. Representative Williams? Votes nay. Representative Wright?
No.
Votes nay. Representative Crawford?
No.
Representative Crawford, 7 nays. No
Sorry,
ayes.
Representative Griffey, but your bill fails.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
This bill will be moved to special calendar.
Thank you.
It's the third row. Okay. Item number 3 is House Bill 2305. Representative Griffey, you're recognized. I do see that it has an amendment. Do we need to place the amendment on there or not?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, please.
What is your drafting code?
014999.
That is correct. I have a motion on the amendment.
Motion.
Proper motion on the amendment. Is there a second? I will second it. You're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The amendment makes the bill. I don't know if you want to add it first before discussion or... It's up
No,
to you.
go ahead and
Okay.
discuss your amendment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what this bill does, it would instruct the coordinator of elections to provide annual training to the persons designated as election crime specialists pursuant to Section 2, 3, and 4. The coordinator would publish and distribute educational materials that are designed to provide information about criminal provisions of our statutes to local law enforcement agencies. The training materials and the educational materials published must include a review of the criminal provisions of the title regarding election crimes. The comptroller should designate 20% of its investigators to receive this training. I believe that also applies for the district attorneys would designate 20% of their assistant DAs to get this special training, as well as the Tennessee Bureau of Investigators to designate 20% of their folks to get this specialist training. That's essentially what the bill does.
You've heard the sponsor's explanation of the amendment. Is there any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, we're ready to vote on Amendment 14999. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is now amended. You're recognized on 2305, and I believe you said that made the bill. Is that correct?
It does, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any questions for the sponsor on the bill?
Would I add one comment, please? Briefly.
You're recognized.
Thank you. This does have a large fiscal note. I actually kind of fully expected TBI, the comptroller, and the DA's office to be in here in favor of it because it would give them additional personnel to assist them in their full-time activities while still letting them get this specialized training for election crime. So, but I know it's got to be a fiscal note, but I just submit that to the committee's consideration.
Any questions for the sponsor? We're ready to, without objection, we're ready to vote on House Bill 2305. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. No. Bill fails.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
At this time, I will turn the gavel. It moves to special calendar, Mr. Griffey. Thank you. At this time, I'll turn the gavel back over to the chairman.
Excuse me, I'm a little disoriented. All right, let's see here. Item number 4, HB 2842 by Leader Camper. There she is. I have a motion and second. I have a motion and second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, what this bill would do is require the Election Commission to designate restroom facilities in each building. Right now, our campaign workers often work long hours, free of charge, and they're really interested in civic participation. This bill will allow campaign workers or volunteers to use the restrooms within the facilities. Generally, they work long hours at night, and in some places, they're not allowed to go in and use the restroom, so they have to leave, go home, and come back and stuff like that, and we're trying to preclude that. Most of the facilities are a church or a gym, a community center, so they all have the facility, the restroom facilities there. This would just say that the Election Commission would not have a problem with them going in and using the restroom, as long as they don't have on campaign material and stuff like that.
Have any questions? We also have coordinator of elections, Mark Goins, here. Is it who Oh, Chairman Hoseclaw.
Leader Camper, where'd you come up with this bill?
We had a situation actually in Shelby County where the election commission would not allow people to go into like one of the churches, even though they had the facilities, and it was not even near where the door entrance was, or not even near where the voting was. And they cited something from the 1800s as why they did that. And so people was having to leave and go down the street.
Was it any kind of COVID related, or is this?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, sir.
Good bill.
Vice Chairman Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if we're correcting something from the 1800s, I'd be in favor of it. Now, let me back up and say that in Knox County, the Election Commission makes sure that there are restroom facilities available. May not be the same as where the polling indoor workers of the poll may be working, but there are restroom facilities for those people that are visiting the outside or the beyond the 100-foot mark. So,
Chairman Williams.
Thank you.
I think I understand the intent of the bill. I just want to make sure, just clarify something, because I think it's important to. These are not the people that are working there on behalf of election administrators. These are the people that are working out on other people's campaigns.
Yes, these are people, yeah.
Okay.
They're volunteering to work. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I know there has been incidents. I remember back in the old days in the 80s and 90s when I first got started, we used to go in and had to cover up our campaign. We weren't allowed to talk to voters.
Right.
I know there's been reports in certain jurisdictions across the state that sometimes when the workers or volunteers for campaigns go in, they start campaigning and it's hard to get them out, or they start talking with friends of theirs in line, and that's not allowed. So it's been a burden in some instances on workers. That's why I was going to have Coordinator Goins can get up just to explain if he's had any incidents across the state, or and when this changed. We'll go out of session for Coordinator of Elections Goins.
So, yeah, Mark Goins, Coordinator of Elections, and I guess I'm partially to blame. So it's been the law for some time, but it's been more strictly enforced since the Carita case. And the Carita case, if you remember, Rosalind Carita had won the primary by a number of votes, but then the party came in and said because of violations, Tim Barnes was the nominee. One of the violations was the fact that she had gone in the 100-foot boundary and had used the restroom. And so once that happened, there was another allegation as well, but once an election was overturned, and I read the case, we have instructed the counties. I don't know about the 1800s. Maybe I don't know what that would be, but although it was sort of, like I say, this is within the 100-foot boundaries, and Chairman Williams is correct. We're talking about the people who are campaigning for individuals. And so, by analogy, you had Carita, who was a candidate. People would be campaigning. We have enforced that because basically what happens if someone's campaigning for someone, they see their neighbor, they may be going in to use the restroom for the 8th time that day, or maybe going in for the first time that day. But, they're probably going to ask that individual to vote for who they want. We would hope that they wouldn't. But this is a tough bill, honestly. I mean, I see it both ways. But what concerns me is the Carita scenario. But at the end of the day, if the legislature passes this, like I say, we will do our best to make sure those facilities are there. But that is the danger. You will be potentially giving a loophole to the campaigning within the 100-foot boundary. Because we don't have poll officials that can police this. We don't have somebody who can follow you to the restroom, follow you back out, and be, making sure you're taking your buttons off.
Representative Hoseclaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you actually think it's been actually an effect on an election, though?
It did. It actually did. So I can also tell you this is one from on a personal level. My father, who has been on the ballot, got absolutely livid with me because he couldn't go in and use the restroom. He's a diabetic. So I see both sides, but frankly, I told Dad, I said, at the end of the day, someone sees you or one of your campaign workers going in there, they're going to think you're trying to do something, improperly influencing the election. The human side of me says, let them use the restroom, and that's what we're talking about. The election side, I mean, if, sometimes we vote early in a county mayor's office. The county mayor has to go to his office, but people will call and say, I should win the election because the county mayor is working in his office, which is within the 100-foot boundary. That's actually not the penalty. The penalty going beyond the 100-foot boundary in campaigning is a misdemeanor. But, it's very difficult to get, it's very difficult to get someone prosecuted. You'd have to basically just not, you'd have to just be blatant and not leave.
I mean, I reckon I see it. They're out there at the 100-foot boundary, then they're at the 40-foot boundary to go use the bathroom. I know, especially someone like me, where, when you got to go, you got to go.
Right.
So,
I get it. I get the human side. And so what we tell people, I get calls on this, mainly from Davis and Shelby. I say, well, they're your workers. You need to be responsible for the bathroom facilities. We're responsible for it for our workers and for the voters.
okay.
But that's the danger you run. And then some of these polling locations, particularly if you're in a rural area, the bathroom's going to be very close to the voting arena. So
Thank you for commenting.
it's not an easy, I understand the common sense part of this. Trust me.
Prior to the rule change or establishment or clarification of the current rule, I believe was it already illegal for a candidate themselves to go into a polling place?
Yeah, but
Would this be overturned if we adopted this?
Well, so essentially in the voting room, it's illegal for anyone that's not voting or anybody that's not credentialed to be there. I mean, there's a variety of folks that actually are in there. So yes, you would be loosening somewhat the requirement. Well, you wouldn't not be losing. I mean, so I tightened it up based on. Well, I say that I don't know what my predecessor did. Frankly, I just tightened it up after I read the Carita case. It may be that they were doing it before. I don't know, but it certainly would in the voting area. The only people supposed to be there: poll watchers, voters, poll officials, and those who have credentials, media, those things. So yes. This would be loosening that law.
Chairman Hosclaw.
Thank you, Chairman. And basically, if you look at the bill, it says workers or volunteers. It's just clearly defined, so that's probably not your candidate. It's workers or volunteers. Thank you.
Would the workers and volunteers, would they still be required under a separate statute to still cover up their campaign memorabilia?
They would have to cover it up. Like I say, once again, it becomes a police issue where if they walk in there, really it's going to be another voter is going to have to tell us that individual has it. Or the other, I wouldn't call it trick, but the other thing that we learn from time to time is that folks like to bring material in and kind of display it as folks have to walk by. But then sometimes that's just organic. Somebody hands you a card as you're walking the precinct and you lay it down. But that's a frequent complaint we get is that campaign material somehow makes it into within that 100-foot boundary. And I've got various, like I say, it could be organic. Somebody gives you a card, you lay it down. And then again, it could be somebody wanting to make sure you see it as you walk by.
Vice Chairman Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I spoke out of turn a while ago because I have to use the bathroom every now and then also. Every now and then. I'm an old guy. Madam Leader, I believe this committee is going to meet again next week. So that we might have time to talk this out, could we wait till next week to try to...
We're still on the amendment.
Even on the amendment, okay. Do I need to, thank you, Mr. Chairman, do I need to wait till...
I'm sorry, we're out of session. I'm getting bad at advice over here.
Call on me when we're back in session.
I believe, did Representative Shaw, a question out of session?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I guess my question is, of course, I've kind of experienced this myself over the years, but by the time election day come, I'm of the opinion if I haven't persuaded someone to vote for me, they probably not going to vote for me anyway. Would it be best controlled if only one person could go in the bathroom at a time? The poll workers, I'm just, in your opinion.
I don't know how you police that. I mean, honestly, our poll officials are there to run the election more than they are anything else. And, we're not really this is a unique.
Yeah,
I feel as awkward testifying about this as y'all probably feel about voting on it. But, we're not the bathroom police in the end. And this may be one of those things, if you are going to postpone it, you ought to talk to your administrators, your folks back home. Because I can tell you that 100-foot boundary, we get more upset people over that boundary than anything else. And if you see someone else walking in, so here's what's going to happen, and here's what does happen. Your opponent, or maybe it's your worker that's campaigning for someone, they see them run in there real quick, and you're going to see them talking to someone. And so the allegation, whoever they're campaigning against, they're going to say, they knew that person, and I know they were campaigning. They may be asking them what happened at church, but at the end of the day, it's going to instill that it's not a level playing field, and that's the things you run into. It sounds kind of trivial, but at the end of the day, there's folks have perceptions about various things, and that 100-foot boundary can get you in trouble easily. Most of your administrators will tell you in 2020, in November, aside from COVID, the people trying to wear campaign stuff into the polling location was one of the top issues we faced. And I mean, we've had folks, you tell them take it off, and they really take it off. We've had a lady take off her shirt. We've had a male take off his shirt. Obviously, one gets more attention than the other, but I mean, those things happen. So I would encourage you to talk to your folks back home. And like I say, it sounds trivial, but there's more that goes into this than you might think.
Any further questions out of session? Seeing none, thank you, Coordinator Goins. We will go back into session. We had two people that wanted to ask questions. If you want to hold off, or are they willing to waive? Okay. We have a question on the bill. If there are no objections to calling the question, seeing none, we're now voting on the bill. All those in favor of the bill say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes carried. It goes on to full local.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee.
Next up is HB 2489 by Representative Dixie. It's Road to the Hill, excuse me. We already announced that. Next up is we have number 7 by Chairman Haston, HB 1992. We have a motion second on the bill.
Thank you,
Please
Mr.
tell us
Chairman.
about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this bill does is year by year it would slowly increase the administrator of election salary until it is equal to the base salary of the county, that county's assessor of property. And with that being said, I know that this bill looks like it's not going to go anywhere on the Senate side. I had quite a few people in my district ask me to bring this, and I just wanted to make sure I had a chance to put it before the committee, and I'm at the will of the committee on what y'all would like to do with this bill.
Well, I've had, Mr. Chairman, I've had several people come to me asking me questions, and I said, well, you need to ask in committee. It is somewhat of a complicated formula. I know there's a possibility. I think it needs to be studied, and it needs to be looked at and researched. And I don't know, what does people think? Vice Chairman Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular bill, I didn't really have it at the top of my list of things to study for what we were going to do today, and I'm glad you brought up this idea. Since it's going to be a complicated math problem, could we put this off to study?
I'll second that.
We have a motion second send to summer study. Any further questions? If not, hearing none, we will take a vote to send HB 1992 to summer study. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Goes to summer study. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman and members.
Next up will be HB 1914 by Representative Eldridge, and he shows up right on cue. Your motion and second. We have a motion and second.
It's been a crazy day.
I believe you have a amendment.
That is correct, sir.
Give me that number.
Excuse me just a moment.
I had a 15487.
15487 is correct. Yes, sir.
There a motion and a second on the amendment. Here a motion and a second on the amendment. All those in favor of attaching the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Please tell us about your amended bill, HB 1914.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is allowing local election commissions to establish rules regarding media access to the polling areas. We've had an issue back in our place where some people, they're saying because they're posting on YouTube and using some social media that they consider themselves media, and they've actually been going into where people are voting. And this bill is just asking that they be allowed to establish some guidelines and credential their media.
I have questions. Have any questions on the bill? Representative Shaw.
Thank you. Just one question, sponsor. So each election polling place would establish pretty much their own rules as to how they would deal with the media people who would come in to sponsor.
Yes.
Chairman, you go ahead.
Yes, sir. This says may adopt. There's not telling them they have to or anything, and it would be entirely up to your local election commission.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no objections, we're now voting on the bill. All those in favor of HB 1914 say aye. Aye. Unopposed, nay. It is passed on to full local.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Next on the agenda is number 9, HB 2121 by Representative Warner. And I believe you have an amendment. I have a motion and second on the bill. All those in favor say aye. Well, excuse me, on the amendment. We have an amendment. Please tell me that number.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, it's amendment number 15394.
Here, a motion and second on the amendment. I have a motion to have a second on the amendment. So moved. All right, I have a motion second on the amendment. The amendment is all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Amendment goes on the bill. Tell us about your amended bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill's intent is to ensure that the state of Tennessee does not contract into an agreement with other states or entities that withhold information from the public inspection when conducting voter roll list maintenance, such as ERIC. This bill relieves pressure from the local county election commissions, adding that all registration verification processes be the responsibility of both county election commission and the state coordinator of elections. Also allows the coordinator of elections to conduct independent audits of voter registration files if they wish. If an audit is conducted and deceased voters are found, the local county election commission shall cancel those voter registrations. I stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
I believe you had and I'd met your concern about ERIC. Mm-hmm. And does this bill address anything else? Is it just about ERIC, or?
It's just about any company or anybody that a state may contract with that's not up to, sharing files, sharing information. It's not just specifically targeted toward ERIC. They're just they're using it as an example.
Okay. Let's see. First up is questions. First up is Representative Shaw.
Are we contracting with somebody now?
I'm not sure who we contract with, sir.
I would like to know if the election coordinator of elections could tell us if we contracting with somebody that's doing this. I mean, if we don't have voter fraud, we're going to soon have it because they're going to have so much to do. They're not going to be able to watch the polls. So
We've, Representative Shaw, we got two more members that wanted to ask questions, Williams and Crawford. Okay, you want to wait and out of session? Okay. We'll go out of session and call Coordinator of Elections Mark Goins up to answer some questions.
Mark Goins, Coordinator of Elections, much better subject this time. We are not a member of ERIC. We do not contract with other states. It's actually a compact, but we're not a member of a compact with other states to do what Section 4 and 5 does of this bill.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Would you have a way of telling if there was a company falling under the umbrella of what this legislation would do? Would you not be able to know if that company did that? Or would you not? I guess my question would be, could somebody just slip in?
So I think this bill is aimed at a current compact of states that are sharing this information. I actually think that the way the law is currently written, we couldn't enter into an agreement with ERIC anyway, because actually the way ERIC works is it's a group of states that's kind of come together in a compact. And the way our law says is that I'm authorized to enter into agreements with other states. For example, Virginia. Currently under the law, if I want to enter into an agreement with Virginia, we could share voter rolls. But what this would do, this would explicitly, so this specific organization, if we were in that compact, there's some concerns that you're not able to get certain records through public records, but we are not a member. I actually think that to become a member, it would take specific legislation to do so. But this bill does do more than just that, but that's the ERIC component.
Thank you.
Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that was my question. When I talked to the sponsor and he brought the amendment to me, I think he was under the impression that the only thing we were dealing with was the compact situation. But after reading it and getting into the bill, I feel like it changes some of the things that I have already done this year, as well as other representatives. Is that right, or am I wrong?
Certainly, this seems to it would affect what you've been working on in your bill. It's gone through the House. The Senate hasn't passed it yet, but there's definitely some mechanics there that are similar.
Chairman Williams.
Similar along the same lines. What I don't want to do is that have multiple bills that are in conflict with each other in state statute just because they're different from one another. I guess my concern is if, under the current premise, if I think Chairman Crawford, I think Chairman Zachary may have a bill as well, and then Representative Warner, if all three of those are find favor and make it across the finish line, would we have a conflict that could be problematic at that point?
Yeah. Specific. So Representative Zachary in the original bill, that his language has been taken out, but there's still conflict there somewhat with what Chairman Crawford's doing. But the other thing that this does, and I went by to see the sponsor as well, but he and we briefly talked, but it was my understanding this was going to go after ERIC as well. But this would add the state election coordinator to the part where list maintenance is involved. And my concern is currently I can't purge a single voter, which I think is the right thing. I don't think I should be able to, go send a confirmation notice or start the process with anybody in any of your counties. I mean, it's your local administrator that, works those roles. And I think that if we were to start that process, so if you look at Section 1 and Section 2, that's kind of giving the coordinator of elections to start getting into the voter rolls and list maintenance of your local counties. And although I feel comfortable that I wouldn't interfere with them, I'm not always going to be in the seat. And, if someone shows up to vote in Knox County and they've, the removal process has started at the state level, I think you could create some issues there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions out of session? Chairman Crawford, do you have additional?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I just wanted to tell Coordinator of Election Goins, I really like him, but I don't want you making decisions for my election commission. So, thank you.
Are there any further questions out of session? If not, we will go back into session. Thank you. We're back in session.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If I may, this bill is not intended to tell our local election officials what to do. It just gives that option if there need to be a case where the state should need to step in. That's not the bill's intent. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Crawford, what part of this bill conflicts with your bill? I'm not really familiar with your bill.
Well, my bill specifically, with a few minor things in it, was.
Yes, Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry about that. My bill was the one that we passed that said you must be a U.S. citizen to be able to vote in any election. It also had a few other things I think that Mr. Goins could probably address a lot better than I do since he deals with them on a daily basis. But that's my concern. As Chairman Williams was speaking, we don't want to do anything that would put us in a conflict head-to-head. That makes us liable for one thing, and the other thing is, why do we want to pass a bill that we've already passed, basically dealing with what you're wanting to take care of? So,
Chairman Williams.
So, Representative, quick question. Chairman Crawford already stated that he had great affection for our Director of Elections, but he didn't want him making decisions. I guess the question is it your understanding, is it your intent? I recognize that you think it's not in the language, but he's testified that the language does say that it enables him to do that or makes it permissive. Is it your intent that he is to do that? Because I share in the affections of our Director of Elections and don't really want him doing it for my community.
Right. No, and I don't either. I want the locals to have as much control as they can. It just gives him the option if there ever need to be a time when he needs to get involved. Maybe a local, I can't give a good example, maybe a local election commission refuses to check one of these things or don't handle a problem like they should.
Right.
I think we could briefly go out of session to ask legal to verify that, because it may not be doing exactly what you wanted it to do, or it could be. Well, no objection. We'll go out of session, ask legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Houston from Legal Services. So sections 1 and 2 adds to section 2-2-106. And in that section B, subsection B, it says it is the responsibility of the County Election Commission to implement an address verification program to identify any voter as changed the voter's address of residence. And this bill would add that it is the responsibility of the County Election Commission and the State Court of Elections to implement an address verification program. So in the way that I read that, it would be a requirement the State Coordinator of Elections would implement this verification program.
Any other questions of legal? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I agree with you all. My coordinator of elections locally looks so much better than Mark Goins. I certainly don't want to put him in that position. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll go back into session. Thank you. I would suggest, this is just a suggestion, it's up to the sponsor, since there appears to be some conflicts going beyond the compacts, you may want to either take off notice or roll so you can work this out to make sure you're not in conflict with other legislation if that's not your intent.
We'll have a chance to get back on the calendar.
What are we on?
Next week is final calendar.
Next week is final calendar, so you'd be on it. Mm-hmm. All right, so we, what's that? So you taking off notice or are you rolling? Okay. With no objections, we're rolling to the next week, final calendar. Thank you. Next up is, we have 5 minutes, so I don't guess we have time to be up next. Next was going to be item 10 by Mr. Powell, but I don't think we have time to address you. We will be meeting here next week, same time, as I say, same bat channel, same bat place. Any announcements? Any further? Excuse me. All bills are road to next week. Is there any other announcements? If not, we are hereby adjourned. See you next week. Thank you.